The world of Airless was like no other, a planet of stunning beauty, with towering crystal structures that sparkled under a sky full of distant stars, and rivers of glowing liquid that moved with a gentle hum. It was a place of power, a seat of an ancient alien empire that stretched across the galaxy. The rulers of Airless were known for their immense strength, wisdom, and the unmatched technology that they controlled. But despite all their power, even the mightiest beings in the universe couldn't cure one thing: the illness that had taken over the beautiful and powerful daughter of King Zorlik. The monarch of the Airless Empire, Princess Zyra, once known for her radiant energy, was now a shadow of her former self. The long golden hair that used to shine like sunlight was now dull, her skin pale, and her once proud posture hunched from weakness. Her sharp eyes, which had always sparkled with curiosity and intelligence, now seemed lifeless. For weeks, she had been unable to eat, her hunger growing with each passing day. No alien medicine, no treatment from her empire's greatest doctors could fix her condition. Every time they tried to feed her, she would fall ill again, unable to keep anything down. Princess Zyra's condition baffled her people. She had been born with a metabolism that had evolved so far beyond what was normal, that even the most advanced nutrients in the galaxy could no longer sustain her. The doctors had tried everything: alien herbs from distant planets, energy infusions from the core of stars, and even experimenting with liquids harvested from unknown sources. Nothing worked. King Zorlik, a powerful and proud ruler, was growing desperate. He had consulted the greatest minds in the galaxy, searching for a solution. But even their knowledge couldn't save his daughter. It was said that the only thing that could help Zyra now was something so unique, so rare, that no one knew if it even existed. The solution, it seemed, lay on a small, far-off planet Earth. Earth was a world filled with life in all its forms. It was a place where simple, yet profound, things like food and culture brought its inhabitants immense joy. The humans of Earth, while not as technologically advanced as the Irlusions, had something that none of the other species in the galaxy possessed: a unique ability to create food that not only nourished but also delighted the senses. Their cooking, with its diverse ingredients and complex flavors, was legendary. But could such a humble thing truly help Princess Zyra? King Zorlik didn't know for sure, but he had no choice but to try. He sent his best emissary to Earth, tasked with bringing back the very best of what the human world had to offer. A chef who could make food that might have the power to heal his daughter. Meanwhile, on Earth, John Carter was a chef, but not just any chef. He was known across the globe for his extraordinary skills in the kitchen. His ability to take simple, everyday ingredients and turn them into culinary masterpieces. John's talent had earned him a reputation, and his restaurant was always packed with people eager to taste his dishes. Yet, despite his success, he lived a simple life. He loved cooking for the joy it brought others, and that was enough for him. One quiet morning, while John was preparing a new dish in his restaurant, a group of strange visitors arrived. Dressed in sleek, dark clothing, their movements were precise, almost robotic, as they stepped into the warm atmosphere of the kitchen. One of them, a tall figure with piercing green eyes, approached John. "We come from the planet Airless," the figure said, his voice calm but commanding. "Our people are in need of your skills. Princess Zyra, the daughter of King Zorlik, is gravely ill. We believe that only your food can help her." John paused, his knife midair as he processed the words. He thought it was a joke at first, some kind of prank. But as the figure continued to speak, explaining the situation in detail, John began to realize that they were serious. Airless, a planet he had never heard of, needed him, no, his food. John's mind raced. He had cooked for famous politicians and celebrities before, but this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. A sick princess? An entire alien empire depending on his cooking to save their heir? It was hard to believe, but the look in the emissary's eyes told him that this was no fantasy. The decision came quickly. John agreed to go to Airless, though part of him felt nervous about what awaited him. He had no idea what the alien world would be like or how his cooking would even make a difference. But he couldn't ignore the opportunity to help, especially when it involved someone's life. Arrival on Aurelius John's journey into Airless was like something out of a dream. The ship that took him there was unlike anything he had seen before, sleek and fast, gliding through space with ease. He was shown around the ship by the emissaries, who spoke little, but their faces were filled with seriousness and purpose. As the ship neared the planet, John looked out the window and saw the alien world grow larger. When he stepped off the ship and onto the surface of Airless, he was in awe. The air was different, crisp, fresh, and yet somehow filled with an energy he couldn't quite place. The buildings around him shimmered in the sunlight, their strange architecture reflecting the planet's advanced civilization. But what struck him the most was the sense of quiet. There was no hustle and bustle, no crowds, just the sound of distant winds and the soft hum of energy flowing through the city. John was quickly escorted to the palace, where he was introduced to King Zorlik. The king was everything John had imagined: tall, muscular, and regal, with an air of authority that seemed to fill the room. But there was something in his eyes, a deep worry and concern for his daughter, that softened the image of the powerful ruler. Then, John was led to Princess Zyra's chamber. She lay in bed, her eyes closed, her body weak. Her appearance was almost otherworldly, with silver skin and delicate features. Yet her fragility was unmistakable. Despite her illness, she still exuded a sense of grace and beauty, something that caught John off guard. He didn't know what to do or how to begin. He had never cooked for an alien before. What if the food he made wasn't what she needed? What if it made things worse? John felt a wave of doubt, but looking at the princess, he knew he couldn't give up. As John watched the princess sleep, he made a silent promise to himself. He would do whatever it took to help her, even if it meant stepping far beyond his comfort zone, even if it meant facing a challenge unlike any he had ever encountered. The world of Airless was in turmoil. The princess needed him, and John Carter, a humble Earth chef, was ready to do his best. The journey ahead would be filled with unknowns. But one thing was clear: the power of food, the simple yet profound act of cooking, had the potential to change everything. And so, the challenge began. John Carter had never felt more out of place in his life. As he stood in the heart of the grand palace on Airless, surrounded by gleaming walls of glass and stone, he could hardly believe how far from Earth he had traveled. This wasn't a celebrity dinner or a high-profile event where his culinary skills would dazzle the rich and famous. This was different. This was life or death. He had arrived at the palace early in the morning, still trying to get used to the strange alien atmosphere. Everything felt so alien, from the way the air smelled different, almost electric, to the way the palace servants moved with silent precision. There were no bustling crowds or servants running around, like in the busy kitchens he was used to back on Earth. Everything in this place seemed calm, controlled, almost to perfect. John was escorted to the kitchen area, which was unlike any kitchen he'd ever seen. The cooking tools and utensils were sophisticated, advanced far beyond anything from his home planet. But there was one thing John realized quickly: these tools were of no use to him if he didn't have the right ingredients. Earth ingredients were what he knew, and they were a huge part of why he had succeeded as a chef. Without them, he would be lost. A soft, firm voice interrupted his thoughts. "Chef Carter, we have gathered the finest supplies we could find for you," the voice said. It was the emissary who had come to Earth to bring him here. She was tall, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer under the light, her black uniform fitting her perfectly. "But many of these ingredients are unfamiliar to you. You will have to work with them if you hope to succeed." John nodded, looking down at the array of alien herbs and fruits laid out before him. The shapes, colors, and textures of the ingredients were nothing like he had ever seen before. Some of them glowed faintly, while others pulsed with an internal energy that made them seem almost alive. He had no idea what any of them tasted like, what combinations might work, or how to even prepare them. But he had no choice. He had to try. For the next few hours, John worked in silence. The kitchen was cool and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaotic, noisy environment of Earth's kitchens. But it was just him and the ingredients. He took a deep breath and focused on the task at hand. He had a mission: to cook something that could heal the princess. He had no scientific knowledge of airless biology and no real understanding of what would work. But he had something that might give him an edge, the instincts of a chef. John started with the basics. He knew how to balance flavors: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. If there was one thing that all cultures shared, it was the need for balance. He began combining alien fruits with earth spices. He used a pungent herb, almost like garlic but with a sharper flavor, and mixed it with a sweet fruit that reminded him of passion fruit. He had no idea if it would work, but he was hoping that the delicate balance of flavors would work in his favorite diet as he worked. He thought about the princess. The doctors and healers had tried everything they could think of, but nothing had worked. The princess was getting weaker by the day, and King Zorlok's desperation was growing. It was up to John now, and the weight of that responsibility felt heavy on his shoulders. But he couldn't think about it too much. He had to focus on what he knew: food. He could make something that was not only nourishing, but something that brought joy. And joy, he believed, was as important as nourishment. After hours of chopping, mixing, and tasting, John felt that he had finally created something that might work. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. He had made a dish of soup, to be exact, using a blend of alien vegetables and fruits, enhanced with a touch of earth spices. Something to make it familiar yet new. The combination of sweet and savory flavors was a gamble, but he had done his best. When the emissary returned to check on his progress, she observed the dish with interest. "This is unusual," she said, "but we will take it to the princess." Princess Zyra's chamber was dimly lit, and John felt a wave of nervousness sweep over him as he entered. He had no idea how the princess would react to this dish, but he hoped it would be the answer to all their problems. Her condition had been getting worse, and her frail body lay motionless on the bed as the royal doctors hovered nearby, watching her with concerned eyes. The princess, despite her weakened state, was still a striking figure. Her silver blue hair, though now limp and tangled, still held a trace of its former beauty. Her once vibrant eyes were closed, and there was an air of sadness around her that made John's heart ache. He had never met her before, but even now, seeing her like this, he could tell that she had once been full of life and energy. John took a deep breath and stepped forward, carrying the dish he had prepared. The doctors parted to allow him access, though they watched with skepticism. After all, nothing had worked so far. They had tried all the best medicines, herbs, and even some of the rarest foods from other planets. Would this simple soup be any different? John approached the princess's bed, offering the soup to her. "Princess," he said softly, unsure if she could even hear him, "this is something I made. I hope it can help you." He wasn't sure what to expect. Would she be able to taste it? Would it even work? He didn't know. But there was something in the way the princess's pale face shifted when the dish was placed in front of her. Her lips parted slightly, as though she could smell something. A doctor stepped forward and gently helped her take a small spoonful of the soup. The room fell into a tense silence as everyone watched. John's heart raced, his hands sweating, as he anxiously awaited her reaction. For what felt like an eternity, there was no movement, no sign of anything happening. Then, suddenly, Princess Zyra's eyes fluttered open. She blinked a few times, looking confused at first. But then, a small smile crept onto her face, a faint spark of life returning to her eyes. She slowly lifted her hand to take another spoonful of the soup. Her movements, though slow and cautious, were more deliberate now, as if she was tasting something that made her feel stronger. The doctors and the emissary exchanged looks of surprise. John could hardly believe what he was seeing. Was it possible? Could this dish actually be working? The princess slowly finished the rest of the soup, and when she set the spoon down, she looked up at John. "This is unlike anything I've ever tasted," she said, her voice weak but clear. "I feel different. I feel alive." John smiled, a wave of relief washing over him. It wasn't a complete recovery, but it was the first sign of progress they had seen in weeks. The princess had eaten and she had enjoyed it. The emissary nodded toward John, her face showing something close to admiration. "This is only the beginning," she said, "but you have given us hope." John couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had done it. He had cooked for an alien princess. And for the first time in what felt like ages, there was hope for her recovery. The mission was far from over, but for the first time, it seemed like they were on the right path. The power of food had just proven itself to be stronger than they ever expected. The days following John Carter's first successful meal for Princess Zyra were filled with a strange mixture of excitement and tension. The princess's health had improved, but there was still much to be done. The small steps forward in her recovery were encouraging, but they were only the beginning. Her body, so finely tuned to a way of nourishment no one on Earth could truly understand, still required careful and precise care. John knew that he wasn't just cooking for her. He was cooking for the future of two worlds, the future of his own planet, Earth. In the great empire of Airless, after his initial success, the royal advisors were hopeful. But they insisted on more. "The princess needs to regain her full strength," one of the doctors, a short alien with deep green skin, explained. "Your food might have helped, but now you must cook for her every day. Each meal must bring more vitality." John nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle deeper into his shoulders. His mission had never been so clear, and yet it had never been so daunting. He had always known that cooking was more than just creating food. It was about balance, about bringing joy and nourishment. But this was different. His cooking now had the power to save a life. He spent the next few days working tirelessly, trying to replicate the success he had achieved with his first dish. But each time he tried, he felt the challenge growing harder. The ingredients he had to work with were still unfamiliar, and he wasn't sure how to balance the tastes and textures to suit the princess's needs. Some of the alien fruits he had used before now seemed too bitter or too sweet, or even overpowering when combined with the other elements. One evening, as he stared at a collection of strange fruits and herbs laid out before him, frustration gnawed at him. The pressure was growing. Each meal was a test, and he wasn't sure he could keep up. He thought about his kitchen back on Earth, his familiar tools, his trusted ingredients, and the ways he knew instinctively how to combine flavors to create magic. Here, he was flying blind. No recipe could prepare him for this. As he stood there, his thoughts were interrupted by the soft chime of a door. Looking up, he saw Princess Zyra entering the kitchen. She looked different today. She was still frail, but her eyes were brighter, and her movements were less sluggish. She hadn't ventured into the kitchen before. She had always stayed in her chambers, recovering slowly from her illness. But today, something had brought her out. "Chef Carter," she said softly, her voice still weak but steady, "I wanted to thank you again." John quickly wiped his hands on his apron, surprised by her sudden appearance. "Your Highness, I'm glad to see you up. How are you feeling today?" Princess Zyra smiled, though it was a faint smile. "Better," she said. "I feel stronger, but I still need more. I still feel hunger in a way that I cannot explain. It is as if my body craves something more, something I cannot reach." John paused, considering her words. He had heard that the princess's condition was unlike anything known to humans, but he had not realized just how complex it was. It wasn't simply about feeding her, it was about restoring something that had been lost. A balance, perhaps, that even her advanced biology couldn't create on its own. "I understand," John said slowly, trying to choose his words carefully. "I'll keep working on it. I'll figure something out." Princess Zyra nodded, then took a few steps closer to the work table. She peered at the strange fruits and vegetables John had been experimenting with, her eyes curious. "Do you mind if I help?" she asked. John raised an eyebrow. Help? With cooking? He wasn't sure what the princess had in mind. Her delicate appearance made it hard to picture her chopping vegetables or stirring sauces. But he was also aware that Airless was a place of ancient knowledge, and she might have skills he didn't know about. "Just observe," she said. "I want to learn. I want to understand how your food works. Perhaps we can discover what I need together." John felt a surge of gratitude for her willingness to be involved. It wasn't just the food that had brought them together, it was the princess's desire to understand. to take control of her own recovery. Maybe, together, they could create something that would truly help her heal. They worked side by side for the next few hours. John explained how he balanced flavors and textures, and how certain combinations could enhance the natural qualities of ingredients. Princess Zyra, despite her lack of experience in the kitchen, was quick to grasp the concept. She was fascinated by the simple ways humans approach food, the creativity and care that went into each dish. It wasn't long before she was suggesting her own ideas, mixing alien fruits with earth spices in ways John hadn't thought of. Her suggestions were unconventional, but there was something about her approach that seemed to unlock new possibilities in John's mind. Perhaps it was her keen sense of balance, a quality he had noticed in her even before she became ill. She had always carried herself with grace and elegance, but there was a certain wisdom in her eyes now, a quiet strength that shone through Dot as they prepared their next dish together. John began to notice something incredible. The princess's presence in the kitchen was changing things. Her energy, however faint it was, seemed to draw out new flavors from the alien ingredients. Her delicate touch brought a certain harmony to the dish that John had been struggling to find. He had always believed that cooking was about intuition and understanding what felt right in the moment. But with Princess Zyra's guidance, he realized that food wasn't just about flavor. It was about connection, about understanding what the body needed, both physically and emotionally. When they finally completed the dish of delicate soup made from a rare alien root, and combined with an earth-based broth that was unlike anything John had ever created. The colors were vibrant, the aroma intoxicating. He could tell by the way the princess looked at it that she felt something shift within her, a quiet hope that perhaps this would be the meal that would bring her the strength she had been seeking. Princess Zyra took the first spoonful. Her face lit up as the flavors danced on her tongue, and for the first time in a long while, John saw her smile fully. The fragile state she had been in seemed to melt away with each bite. "This is incredible," she whispered, the words soft but full of meaning. "It is as if I can feel every cell in my body coming back to life." John watched her closely, amazed. She had always been beautiful, but now there was a glow about her, a spark of life he had only dreamed of seeing again. He knew that this meal wasn't just about food, it was a symbol of their shared journey, of the bond they had formed through the struggle to save her. Dot, as the princess finished the soup, she looked at John with a mixture of gratitude and something else, something deeper. "You have done something extraordinary," she said. "I cannot thank you enough for what you've given me. Not just food, but hope." John felt his chest swell with pride. This was what he had always wanted from cooking, to make a difference in someone's life. But what had started as a simple mission to help a sick princess had turned into something much more significant. He hadn't just helped her regain her strength, he had discovered something about himself, too. Something about the power of food, the power of creating, and the power of sharing that creation with others. The days on Airless were becoming more and more like a blur to John. What had started as a simple task to cook for an alien princess had turned into something far greater. Each meal he prepared for Princess Zyra seemed to bring her closer to full strength. Yet he knew that this was far from over. Every dish had to be carefully crafted, each flavor balanced just right. Her health, while improving, was still fragile. She needed more than just simple nourishment. She needed food that would heal her body and soul. The royal palace had become John's home, and the kitchen was now his domain. Over the past few weeks, he had learned to work with the strange and exotic ingredients of Airless. He had experimented with fruits that shimmered like gems, herbs that smelled like the deep forest, and roots that pulsed with an eerie energy. Each new ingredient was a challenge, but he had come to see them as puzzle pieces that, when put together just right, could help Princess Zyra reclaim her vitality. But despite the progress, there was still one problem that John couldn't shake. The princess's condition was unlike anything he had ever encountered. She needed not only to be fed, but to be restored both physically and emotionally. And while he had been able to give her meals that helped her body regain strength, there was a deeper hunger in her, one that food alone couldn't solve. It was something that John could only begin to understand, the longing for something beyond survival, something that could bring joy, a sense of normalcy. One morning, as John prepared his usual assortment of dishes, Princess Zyra entered the kitchen once again. She had become more active in recent days, spending less time in her bed and more time walking through the palace gardens, or sitting with the royal advisors. Her strength had grown, and her spirit seemed to be following suit. But there was still something missing. "Chef Carter," she called, her voice clear and steady. "I have been thinking." John glanced up from his work, wiping his hands on his apron. "Yes, Your Highness? You've given me so much," she continued, her eyes warm yet thoughtful. "Your food has done more than just nourish me. It has brought me hope, joy even. But I can feel that I am still lacking something." John nodded slowly. He had been feeling the same way. She wasn't just recovering physically, she was beginning to hunger for something deeper. Something more than just the basic sustenance his dishes provided. "What do you mean?" he asked gently. "There's something more I need," she said, her eyes meeting his. "I need a meal that is more than just healing. I need a meal that is a celebration. I need something that makes me feel whole again. Something that reminds me of what it means to live." John paused, considering her words. He had been so focused on restoring her strength that he hadn't stopped to think about this aspect. Princess Zyra had been a ruler before she fell ill. She had tasted grand feasts, had attended lavish banquets with dignitaries from across the galaxy. She had known the pleasure of rich, decadent dishes that celebrated life. But now, she needed something more than just the practical. She needed to feel alive again. "I think I understand," John said, a new idea forming in his mind. "You need something special. Something that's not just for healing, but for celebration. Something to make you feel whole." Zyra smiled, the first real smile John had seen in days. "Yes, exactly." The next few days were filled with intense preparation. John knew this meal had to be different. It had to be something truly spectacular. Something that combined all of his knowledge of Earth cooking with the strange, unique ingredients of Airless. This wouldn't just be a meal, it would be a feast for the senses. An experience that would remind Princess Zyra of what it was to live, to enjoy, and to truly savor the pleasures of food. John spent hours selecting the finest ingredients. He knew he had to use the best of both worlds, the unique, glowing fruits of Airless and the familiar, comforting ingredients of Earth. He chose a rare fruit from Airless that shimmered like a star, its taste both sweet and tangy. He paired it with a rich, creamy sauce made from a combination of Earth herbs and spices, adding a touch of heat and warmth that he knew would bring the dish to life. He also prepared a delicate soup using a rare root vegetable, which he learned could only be found in the deepest forests of Airless. The vegetable was earthy and robust, perfect for creating a savory base that would complement the sweetness of the fruits. As he worked, John's thoughts turned to Princess Zyra. He had spent so much time focusing on her physical health, but he realized now that her recovery needed to be more than just about restoring her strength. She needed joy. She needed to remember the pleasures of life, the things that made her feel human, or at least as close to human as an alien princess could feel. He wanted her to experience the warmth of a meal that not only fed her body, but nourished her spirit. By the time the meal was ready, John was exhausted, but there was a deep satisfaction in his heart. This meal, he knew, would be special. It would be more than just food. It would be a celebration of life, of recovery, and of the bond that had grown between him and the princess. Princess Zyra entered the kitchen later that afternoon, looking better than she had in days. Her skin had regained some of its glow, her steps were lighter, and there was a spark of energy in her eyes that John hadn't seen before. She had come to trust him, to believe in his cooking, and now she was ready for something extraordinary. John presented the meal to her with a sense of anticipation. The dishes were laid out on a grand table, each one more beautiful than the last. The shimmering fruit glistened under the soft light of the palace, and the rich, savory soup steamed in delicate bowls. Princess Zyra's eyes widened as she took in the sight of the meal before her. This looks incredible," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "What is this?" "It's a celebration," John replied with a smile. "A celebration of you, of your recovery, and of the life you have yet to live." Zyra carefully lifted her spoon, tasting the soup first. Her eyes closed for a moment as the flavors danced on her tongue, rich, earthy, and warm, with a hint of spice that made her smile. This is like nothing I've ever tasted," she said. "It feels as though each bite is reminding me of something I had forgotten. The warmth, the depth, it's more than just food. It's like life itself." John watched as she took a bite of the glowing fruit next. The sweetness combined with the tangy, almost sparkling flavor made her gasp in surprise. "It's like a burst of energy," she said, laughing softly. "I can feel it in my whole body." She ate slowly, savoring each bite, each flavor, letting the meal fill her with both energy and joy. It was as if, with each dish, she was being reminded of the pleasures of life, of what it meant to truly experience the world. The meal, which had taken hours of work and careful planning, was more than just a way to restore her health. It was a reminder of her strength, her beauty, and her future. When the last of the dishes had been finished, Princess Zyra sat back in her chair, her face full of contentment. "Chef Carter," she said softly, "I cannot thank you enough. This meal, this feast, has done more for me than you can possibly understand. You've given me not just my strength, but my joy. You've reminded me of who I am." John felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what he had been working for all along. This was why he had come to Airless to heal, to restore, and to bring life back to someone who had lost it. And in that moment, he realized that his work had done more than just feed a princess. It had brought hope to an entire empire. The palace on Airless had transformed from a place of quiet desperation to one of renewed hope. Princess Zyra, once frail and weak, had regained her strength with the help of John Carter's meals. The empire was beginning to see their princess return to the vibrant, powerful leader she had once been, and the entire court had begun to whisper of her miraculous recovery. The bond between her and John had grown strong, not just as chef and patient, but as to people who had shared a journey unlike any other. Still, there was one final challenge ahead. Princess Zyra had recovered physically, but there was something more, a sense of completion. A need for closure that she knew was tied to the final meal John would prepare for her. They had traveled far together, exploring new flavors, cultures, and ideas. And Zyra was now ready for the ultimate test of her recovery. This meal would not just be another dish to heal her. It would be a celebration of everything she had learned, everything she had regained, and everything she had yet to achieve. John had noticed her growing confidence. Each day, she walked through the palace with more strength, her presence growing more radiant with each passing moment. He could see the old spark returning to her eyes, the same spark that had once made her a brilliant and beloved princess. Yet, despite her recovery, there was a lingering question in her eyes, a question that John had come to understand. She was searching for her place in the world again. She was looking for something more than strength. She was looking for her purpose. The time had come for John to create one final meal, a meal that would not only mark the end of her illness, but would also signal the start of her new life. It had been weeks since John had first set foot on Airless, and in that time, he had learned more than he ever expected. The palace's kitchen had become his second home, and the Irrelusion cuisine, with all its strange and beautiful ingredients, had become both his challenge and his joy. He had discovered that cooking was more than just mixing ingredients. It was about understanding people, about nourishing not only the body but the soul. Princess Zyra had taught him that. As John stood in the grand kitchen, preparing for the final meal, he reflected on everything that had led him to this moment. He had arrived on Airless, unsure of himself, unsure of what his food could truly accomplish. But now, after all they had been through, he understood the true power of his craft. He was more than just a chef. He was a healer, a creator of experiences. And today, he would make something extraordinary. He had spent the last few days searching through every corner of the palace for the perfect ingredients. He had gathered the rarest fruits, the most delicate herbs, and the richest spices that Airless had to offer. But he knew that he couldn't just rely on the alien ingredients. This meal had to combine the best of both worlds, Airless and Earth. He chose to use a special earth grain, one that was hardy and warm, to serve as the base. It would provide the comfort of home, the familiarity that Zyra would need. He paired it with an illusion fruit that pulsed with an inner energy, a fruit that had the power to invigorate, to bring strength and clarity. For the final touch, he added a sauce made from a mixture of rich, earthy mushrooms from Earth and a few secret ingredients that he had discovered on his journey. Together, the dish would symbolize everything Zyra had regained: strength, hope, and balance. Princess Zyra entered the kitchen that evening, dressed in a flowing gown of royal purple. She looked regal and graceful, the signs of her recovery evident in every step she took. Her long hair, once dull and lifeless, now shimmered in the soft light of the kitchen. There was a calmness in her demeanor, a sense of peace that had been missing when John had first met her. John looked up from his work, his heart lifting at the sight of her. The time had come, Chef Carter, Zyra said, her voice steady and full of gratitude. I've been thinking about our journey together. When I first met you, I was so weak, so lost, but you helped me find my way again. I can feel it now. I feel like myself once more. Strong, whole. But there's one last thing I need. One last meal that will bring me full circle. John nodded, understanding what she meant. This meal wasn't just about food. It was about completion. It was about closing one chapter and beginning another. For both of them, I've prepared something special for you, Your Highness, he said softly. It's a meal that combines everything we've learned together. It's about strength, balance, and renewal. I hope it's what you've been looking for. Zyra smiled, her eyes filled with a warmth that John had never seen before. I trust you, she said simply. As Zyra took her seat at the grand table, the final meal was served. The dish before her was a masterpiece, a combination of both earth and illusion ingredients, each layer carefully crafted and balanced. The base of hardy earth grain was surrounded by vibrant illusion fruits, their colors almost glowing in the soft candlelight. The rich, savory sauce pooled round the dish, the earthy mushrooms adding depth and warmth. Everything on the plate was a reflection of Zyra's journey from the comfort of Earth's simplicity to the complex beauty of Airless. Zyra took her first bite slowly, savoring the explosion of flavors. The warmth of the grain filled her, grounding her, while the vibrant fruit offered a burst of energy. The sauce was rich and deep, bringing everything together in perfect harmony. As she chewed, her eyes closed for a moment, and a soft sigh escaped her lips. This is incredible, she whispered. It feels like I am whole again. Every bite reminds me of something important. Strength, joy, balance. I can feel it. It's more than just food, it's everything I've needed. John watched her carefully, his heart swelling with pride. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment where his food had become more than just nourishment. It had become a part of her recovery, and now a part of her future. Princess Zyra finished the meal, her face glowing with satisfaction. She set down her spoon and looked up at John, her expression filled with deep emotion. You've done more for me than you know, Chef Carter. This meal, it has given me everything I was missing. I am ready now, ready to be the leader I once was, ready to step into my role and take my place in the world once again. John felt a wave of happiness wash over him. He had helped her find her way back. He had given her more than just food. He had helped restore her sense of self, her strength, and her purpose. For a brief moment, it wasn't about the palace, the empire, or even the food. It was about the bond they had created, the journey they had shared, and the future that lay ahead for both of them. The celebration that followed was grander than any feast John had ever experienced. The court of Airless gathered to honor Princess Zyra's recovery, to celebrate her return to health, and to thank John for his role in her healing. Music filled the air, and laughter echoed throughout the palace. For the first time in a long time, Princess Zyra felt at peace. She stood at the center of the grand hall, addressing her people. I owe my life, my strength, and my future to many, she began, her voice carrying across the room. But there is one person whose kindness and skill have made this journey possible. Chef John Carter, I thank you. You have given me the gift of life. John stood at the back of the room, his heart filled with gratitude. He had never imagined that his journey to Airless would change him in so many ways. He had come here to cook for a princess, to help her heal. But what he had found was something far more profound: the power of food, of connection, and of the human or alien spirit. As the celebration continued, John realized that this was more than just the end of a journey. It was the beginning of something new, of friendship, a partnership, and a shared purpose. The final feast had come, and it was more than he had ever dreamed it would be.